Okay, I was outside my bubble. My bad. Testing one, one, two. Testing one, 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 two. Okay, there we go. Yes, yes, yes. All right, welcome out everyone to another Child Dev lunch. Today we have a great talk. So for my Docker fans, get ready. All right. Before we get started though, I just want to take the time to thank our awesome sponsors for this awesome meal because I had like 6 slices of pizza already. So thank you. All right. So before we get started, anyone have any community announcements? Anna, welcome to the stage. Come on, girl. Yes.
Hi guys, I'm Anna Sherman. I'm a developer at Carbon 5, but I also am an organizer for Codex X, which is the ladies tech group in town. We are having an event next Wednesday, 6:30, on this floor. It's going to be on adding users and authentication in Rails. Everyone is welcome to come. It's just a place where women can come feel empowered and safe to learn how to code. So if you're interested in coming, we're on meetups and you can sign up there. Another announcement, tomorrow is Scenic City Summit, and you can still get your tickets online, I believe, and that's like an all-day conference that's going to be over at the conference center here. So if you haven't heard of it, look it up, and you should sign up and go. Scenic City Summit, and then in October, yeah, Scenic City Summit is tomorrow. Yeah. The date changed from last year, so yeah. October 26th and 27th is Gig City Elixir, and that is not just an Elixir conference, it's a functional programming conference. If you're not into Elixir or functional programming, but you might want to be, there's some mentoring classes every Thursday night, starting tonight, for Elixir. So if you're interested in that, you can come, hang out, get to know a little bit more about that language. And there's some scholarship opportunities if people are really interested in coming. You can speak to me about that.
All right, thank you so much. Also, too, I'm looking through my Slack really quickly because there's an awesome event with Zapier going on later on tonight between 5 and 7. Give me a second. Because I think this would be really great for, huh? Is that the Chattanooga? What time? Okay. So yeah, so for those watching live, come out to Zapier. It's at the Chattanooga from like 5 to 7. It'll be a good opportunity to meet the company and see about possible opportunities. All right, so before we get started, are there any more community announcements today? No, not even one? Huh? Oh yes, oh yes. All right, so I sent out a message to everyone. So Aaron, he's a Carbon 5 member, a good friend of ours. He's going to be coming down next Tuesday evening from 6:30 to 7:30, and it's going to be a talk on myrtle trees. So come out. It's going to be really good. There will be food and drink, so if you're trying to get your grub on, come on. All right, so without further ado, we're going to welcome our speaker to the stage, James Candan. See, oh, look, I did it. I did it. All right. Give him a round of applause, everyone.
Single Mountain, so if you want to come check that out, be good on you. So this is the Docker abstraction you are looking for. My name is, as they said, James Candan. I've been a developer for 9 years, and I moved here from LA about 8 years ago, which blows my mind to think about. You can find me on most social media sites as jcandan with 82. I work for Code Journeyman. We're a software agency, like I said, based in Signal Mountain. Such clients as Georgia Tech and Oak Ridge National Labs, which makes for really interesting projects, you know, managing spent nuclear fuel and interesting things like that. And you're here because you want Docker. You know this, I know this, I've wanted Docker for a while, but I kept running into issues. I was juggling competing, timelines for projects, competing budgets, and I needed to bring value to my client. And so often, when I didn't have the mentorship to get me into the swing of things with Docker, a failed attempt after another failed attempt, I eventually gave up. I'd make progress here and there, but never really fully adopted it personally, nor at our office. But I knew that it was the way to go. And I came across a project called Lando. And what I was tempted not to do was to adopt something like Lando or other Docker abstractions, because I didn't want to be trapped by training wheels. Like, if it didn't give me access to being able to work with Docker directly, if I were to attain that knowledge and need to customize things more fully, I would want to make sure that I had full access to Docker. Also, a lot of the Docker abstraction tools that I found were platform, language, or framework specific. For example, Doxel or DDEV are very Drupal specific tools out there. Homestead is a Laravel specific tool out there. So I didn't want to get trapped, and I kept wanting to learn Docker, but I kept putting it off because of the frustrations that I ran across. But with Lando, well, what is Lando? It's a way for developers to quickly specify and spin up development environments on their local machine. It is cross-platform. It is actually a previous tool that was used called Calabox. It was built for the Drupal community, although I think it worked with other projects. And Lando ended up being Calabox 3.0. It's their up-and-coming, more versatile local development tool. It is open source, and as we've been saying, it's built on Docker. So with Lando, you can easily mimic production, which is important. You can standardize team and development environments across platforms. You can, it's a version-controlled configuration file, and allows you to easily extend and customize your tool set. So what we'll cover today is some Lando basics, even some terminology, how to install Lando, and Landifying a whatever you want repo. Today we'll actually be doing a Laravel app. We'll cover customizing a Lando app, and I wanted to get to the point where we can talk about continuous integration, but didn't have time and or really experience yet in that to be able to add that portion of these slides. But it is doable. The documentation is there. So some Lando basics. It is a simple YAML file. It's in-repo. You have with Lando what are defined as recipes. They're basically sensibly pre-configured stacks. And we'll show you in a minute what some of those pre-configured stacks are. But the sensibly pre-configured part is the thing that matters here. You can add services and tools very easily, like Solar, Node, Gulp, whatever you need. You can specify build and automation steps. And essentially what this becomes is your local development environment dependency manager. And I think that's really cool. So some of the pre-baked recipes, you'll probably recognize a number of these logos. And you'll probably recognize that a number of these are PHP friendly. But that's not going to be the only recipes that are made available. And also a number of the services that are baked in are non-PHP projects. For example, some of the configurable and swappable services I've highlighted or might be of interest to folks in this room who are not in the PHP world. So there are a number of them. Installing Lando is easy. Like I said, it's cross-platform, so on Mac OS, you can use Homebrew or just download the DMG and install it. Same with Windows, grab an exe file and install it. Make sure for Windows that your Hyper-V is enabled. I'm not a Windows guy, so I don't even know what that means. And Linux. So you just download and install it from the DEV, the Pacman, or RPM packages. So let's Landify a project today. I was thinking I don't want to use my demo app for everything, so I went with Batman. And we're going to build Batman, a customer relationship management platform, because we're just that awesome, from scratch, using Laravel. Yeah. No, we're not going to actually build the entire CRM app. I'm not going to go through and architect any of that. I am just going to show you how to spin up a Lando app. But to start off, you run Lando init, and you can specify these 3 flags. The recipe that you're going to choose, in this case we chose the Laravel recipe. We're going to specify the web group, where the index.php or index.file is going to live, and the name of the project. If you don't specify one or any of these flags, it will prompt you with questions, and you can fill those out. And you run that, and it does its thing very quickly. All it's done so far is just giving you this lando.yaml file. The most basic lando YAML config file you can have. Specifies the name, the recipe, and where web root will live. At this point, if you ran lando, just the command lando, it will tell you what you have available as different commands or tools on the command line. It, for example, has Artisan, which is the Laravel CLI tool. So is the Laravel CLI. You also have PHP, MySQL. You have Composer from PHP's Composer dependency manager. Start, stop, rebuild your stack, logs. This is actually really cool. If you've been working with Docker, you know that you need to set up your logs correctly to go to the right place, and so they're available on a volume that's shared across your host and your containers. And if you get it set up right, you can get access to logs. Well, what's nice is Laravel kind of sensibly pre-configures all of this. So you just run lando logs, and you get a log from all of the containers that this project is dealing with right off the bat. At this point, we have nothing but a lando YAML file. So let's run lando start. And right off the bat, it's identifying a couple of services you have. You have the app server and the database server. And it's already done the work of giving you a proxy. So you've got on your local box a project-specific friendly URL. And it's working. I know this says nothing's found, but that's because we have no files. We just have that lando YAML. But it is running Apache at this point. And I think most of you know that. So at this point, we'll use the tool set that we have available through Lando. We'll use the Laravel command and create a new project. And we're going to call it the Batman CRM. Run this, and it's going to reach out to the internet and grab all the files for Laravel and make those available in our project folder. It actually creates the directory for the Batman CRM, but as I said before, the Lando file should be checked into your project's repo. So let's move that file into the Batman CRM. Let's change directory into that directory and restart our Lando stack. At this point, you've got a working Laravel app. I mean, this is nice, right? Literally, all we've done is added a file with that. 4 lines. And we've got a working Laravel app. There's a few things of note that we'll need to make changes to some of Laravel's files. For example, Laravel comes with a .env file so that you can specify secret information, such as your database username, password, host, etc. By default, Laravel specifies Homestead as its database username. But we're obviously not using Homestead. We've opted to go with Lando. So we'll need to modify those to match Lando's recipe, Laravel recipe setup. And so we'll specify the app URL, the DB host, and I'll show you in a moment where I got this information. At this point, we can run Lando artisan migrate, and this is a Laravel tool that allows you to basically create the scaffolding, the schema for your database. And if we run Lando info, we have access to all of the services that have been that are available in our container. So we've got the app server service and the database service. And notice the host name that I used here in our end file is based off of that. And same with the username, password, and database name. And these are all default configurations that came with the Laravel recipe. But you have access to them through here. You also have access to them as environment variables. So if you wanted to like dynamically grab those and not just specify it in a hard .env file, but maybe in a .php file, you have the opportunity to do that through the environment variables. So let's customize this Lando file a bit. Some of the things you might want to customize are your front-end tooling. You might want to have a LAMP stack, but you might want to include Node, NPM, Grunt, Gulp, Bower. You might want to specify build steps or add additional commands like PHP lint, additional services like Solar, Node, Redis, Varnish. All of these services are available. You might want to specify automation. Do this when this happens. And all of that is done in this Lando config file. So the first specification we'll make is we'll change the database from the default of MariaDB to Postgres. And we'll enable Xdebug because that's part of the Laravel recipe, and most of the other recipes are based on PHP. So we've got Xdebug available to us. And the only thing I have to do, by the way, is enable it here. I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever dealt with this, but enabling Xdebug can be a little hairy sometimes. You got to go into the PHP INI and enable it. You sometimes might even need to separate your PHP INI from a PHP CLI INI. So you have two separate configurations for your for working with it at the command line. And there's conflicts with PHP Composer. This is all I had to do to get it working. This is phenomenal. Another thing we'll do is we'll go in and we'll modify the default app server and actually tell it that when that app server is run, go ahead and run these extra scripts, these extra commands alongside it. So let us know what we're doing and get into the Lando app itself, or in our case, Batman CRM, and run Composer install. So be sure to do that every time the Lando is built. Another thing I want is Node. In Lando, you have a package file for Node to work with and grab dependencies. It also comes with a build tool for the front end called Laravel Mix, and you run it with a call to npm run dev. And so every time I fire up this Lando stack, if I pass it to the developer team next to me, across the wall, on the other side of the cubicle, whatever, he now has access to this and can simply run Lando start and their environment is built, ready to go, done. And this is in repo. Powerful, it's fun, it's easy, I love it. Okay, so This was an example I put together for Laravel. And here's another example I'm going to show you where I put it together for Drupal 8. This time we changed the web root to web. And that's the subdirectory where all the files will live that are going to be served to the web. The recipe is Drupal 8. I specify my database. I enabled Xdebug. I ran composer install. You're used to all of this, but I did something a little different here. Instead of running Laravel's commands for the build, I actually specified, let's go into the Drupal 8 theme, run npm install, and run gulp. I also make gulp available to the host from here. So now, on the command line, without SSHing into the container, I can just run lando gulp and have access to all of gulp's powerful tooling. I can run events, or I can run scripts based off an event. So for example, there is a lando command that was made available in the Drupal 8 recipe called db import. So if I've got a SQL file, I run that file, and or I import that file into the database for this for this lando Drupal 8 instance. I can tell it that upon finishing that event, go ahead and clear caches, all your caches for Drupal. So you can have automation built in. There's a number of resources available for you to look into this further. The documentation is actually pretty nice, phenomenal documentation. The Slack channel is available. You might notice that it's through Calabox. That's because this used to be another project called Calabox. That's pretty much all I've got. I know I covered a lot in a very short period of time, but I just wanted to introduce you guys to this tool. I think it's become a phenomenal part of our agency, so I thought I'd share it and get opinions and ideas, maybe answer some questions.
So, does anyone have any questions?
Well, raise your hand, Lee. No, you go ahead, Ben. You had the mic first.
Is there some plan to make it more automated? Because it seemed like you had to do a bunch of sort of bizarre manual steps after you initted. Like you had to move a file into a subdirectory and all this stuff up into the lando commands, or is there no desire to do that?
Yeah, so I'll say this. You can go at it from a couple of different angles. In this instance, I init lando first, and then I got my project going. But if you've already got a project and you want to just add a lando file to it, you can do that. That's why we had to move the file into the project, is because I started from scratch and I used lando to even grab the files in the first place. But if I have Composer installed globally, I could just go Composer, create project, Laravel, and then lando init within that project directory. So, also a quick note, lando is currently in beta. We're using it full-time at our office, love it. Haven't had any major problems or issues with it. Any problems that I have had though, their Slack channel is very active. So get on there and throw your questions out there. They're pretty good. But again, the documentation is great too.
Really for people in the audience, is anyone currently using Docker for their local development environments? I am. If anyone that's not currently using Docker really want to move to it, because I'm sure we've all broken our machines once or twice by installing stacks and removing them. Yeah, I'm a huge convert over to lando for this reason, because it works with everything.
All right, are there any other questions?
Are there ways to extract out the Docker configs for like deployment purposes?
For what purposes?
For deployment. So basically extracting out the config that you've done for your local, you're getting ready to deploy. Can you extract out whatever Docker config it's using to kind of use that as a base for deployment?
As far as I know, yes. But I'm still kind of digging into that portion of it myself. We're working on implementing continuous integration and continuous deployment ourselves. But that is currently a work in progress, so I can't answer that question totally. But I know that there is documentation on it. And just based on some of the examples I've read through and looked at, I would say the answer to your question is yes. Or maybe we use Lando to actually be the build. I'm not sure.
Do we have any other questions? Any other questions? All right. Well, let's give James Candan a round of applause again. All right. So that is going to be all for today.